All right. Hello. Welcome everybody to Reserve Seating. We are excited to be talking about My Cousin Vinny this week because Rob, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of your favorite movies, right?
This is one of my favorites.
All right, you got the floor then, my friend.
Should I just go now? So My Cousin Vinny, 1992, Joe Pesci, Marissa Tomei. Obviously, there's all kinds of things to talk about with this movie. Obviously, the Marissa Tomei performance is one of the rare comedy Oscar wins. Jonathan Lynn, who, as you sort of mentioned last week, is sort of quietly one of my favorite comedy directors because Clue is also another one of my favorite movies. Dale Larner, who wrote the film, obviously also wrote like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels and some other great stuff. This has always been one of my favorite movies. This and Terminator 2 were the two
Mhm.
movies on my grandmother's VHS shelf that I watched way before I should have. Like way, way, way. Like I was watching this movie way, way, way too young. I have this movie memorized. I know every beat of this. I rewatched it yesterday, but I really probably didn't even need to because it's just I know every single beat of this. I
Yeah.
think it holds up incredibly well. I know comedy is subjective, obviously. Not everything is everybody's cup of tea. But for the most part, I think it's a brilliant comedy as well as just a really good court courtroom movie. I mean, it's a court movie. It's a great court case. It's been cited. It's Jonathan Lynn is a lawyer or has a law degree, the director, so he kind of knew how to work through the processes of how things actually work. And apparently the movie is actually cited in law schools and stuff as a good example of procedure. And outside of all that, I just think it's really fun.
Yeah, I took some notes. It is attorneys have lauded it for its accurate depiction of criminal procedure and trial strategy, including expert witnesses, voir dire, relevance, and cross-examination. And also the fact that what you learn in law school often does not apply in the
To the
courtroom,
courtroom,
and that
right?
you kind of have to learn it by practice. And that's something that the movie has been lauded as being really good at, is showing Vincent LaGuardia
Gambini.
Gambini, thank you. Um, Kind of finding his footing and becoming a great trial lawyer just by, working it out.
This is my favorite Joe Pesci performance. I mean, on a list of great Joe Pesci performances, I think this is my favorite.
I never think of him as the best actor of all time.
Yeah.
However, when I see him in something like The Irishman, where he's up against two other guys who could be considered among the best actors of all time, he blows them out of the water.
Yeah.
So is Joe Pesci sneaky one of the best actors of all time?
By the transitive property, by some sort of subtle movie magic, yes, it sounds like Joe Pesci might actually be the best actor of all time. This time, I was really taken by the Fred Gwynne performance. I definitely think he should have got a supporting actor nomination if Marissa Tomei was going to get one, and she's brilliant in the film. My God,
Yeah.
one of my first crushes was just, oh boy. Anyway, I'm going to gush and gush and gush, and I'll turn it into Chris Farley show. But Adam, what's your sort of overall perspective on this movie?
So I saw this movie when I was 10. I saw it in theaters. It was a movie I watched after baseball practice. My dad took me and he's like, you can watch, it was like a Friday night, and he's like, you can see any movie you want. And I was like, Basic Instinct. And he's like, well, maybe not any movie you
Not
want.
any.
And I remember there was like Hook at the Dollar Theater, which was going to be like a redemption story because the night that I saw Hook, I violently was vomiting. So I missed a lot of Hook. I don't know why I brought that up. My cousin Vinny was another option, and I made the right choice because my cousin Vinny is great. It's a movie that is so rooted in cable rewatches and
Oh,
home video rewatches, and it's super rewatchable. It's like an American classic at this point. There's something special. There should be a term for movies where there's a breakout performance that just kind of lifts the entire movie into the heavens, like Marissa Tomei in this or Sandra Bullock in Speed. Like there's something that just kind of makes it an essential movie that like needs to be put in the canon of all timers. But yeah, I liked what you said about Fred Gwynn. I think like this movie has such a deep supporting cast that doesn't get enough credit because you've got like Lane Smith is great as the prosecutor. and he was awesome back in that period of time with like the Mighty Ducks and Son-in-Law. And then you got Austin Pendleton, who's really funny, and you've got Bruce McGill, who's invaluable. But yeah, this is such an impressive screenplay because it's not only consistently funny, but it also, obviously like knows what it's talking about in terms of like a court trial. But it's never confusing. It's always like information that's doled out in a really digestible way, but it's never at the expense of it being entertaining first or funny first.
I like that you're watching Vinny learn humility. I also really like that this movie is equally sort of affectionate and kind of pokes fun at Brooklyn and Alabama in the
Mhm.
same way, at the same time. This movie could have very easily been very mean spirited about the American South and kind of, it's got its moments, the lard moment and all the stuff with the witnesses being kind of, hillbillies or whatever. But it takes just as many shots at Vinny and Mona Lisa and just as many sort of subtle digs at like their clothing being so out of place and just the obviously the two Utes moment and so many of those things that really by the end of the movie you really like and respect the judge, the district attorney, the bailiff. Like you like all the Alabama people. It's one of those movies where I have a hard time even really diving into it because it's just so much a part of my DNA.
It's a movie that I have a lot of like kind of one-off thoughts about, but not so much like a deep analysis. So I do
Exactly.
want to ask you some questions.
Let's do it.
Grits. Where do you stand on grits?
I'm pro grits. I like grits.
Grits rule.
Yeah.
There's a restaurant I go to called Southern Kitchen, and they have shrimp and grits, and it's delicious. And I taught a family member that they should put hot sauce on their grits, and that ups it just a notch. Okay, did you know that there was a 1998 album that Joe Pesci did in character as Vincent LaGuardia Gambini
Vincent
called
LaGuardia Gambini sings just for you. Oh, I've listened to that album, my friend.
I tried listening to it this afternoon. It
It's
definitely wasn't my first
eh,
attempt listening to it, but I made it maybe 30 seconds into Yo Cousin Vinny, and I had to turn it off.
due respect to Joe Pesci, who started as a singer, right?
Yeah,
Started his
no,
career
it's
as a
not a
singer.
it's a novelties album for sure, but like
Yeah.
he's not an untalented musician. So, did you know that there was a novel series intended to have Mona Lisa Vito and Vincent LaGuardia Gambini as a thin man type couple?
What happened that we didn't get this?
I think they wrote the second book. If you go on Wikipedia, you'll find the title of it. It's something Brooklyn.
Okay.
Maybe you can find it on eBay somewhere.
So it exists.
Yeah, I think the second book exists, and then they didn't do another one after that.
I am buying it
Yeah,
today.
it's like when I found out that Good Burger 2 was a book based off of off of a screenplay, but this was before Good Burger 2 was a thing. So
Oh.
this was like in 1999, somebody there was a script for Good Burger 2, and they turned it into a novelization, and then the movie got put into turnaround, and it never happened.
So is the real Good Burger 2 canon? Like does it where does is it a multiverse situation?
It's a split. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You have two parallel universes of Good Burger 2, but I will say the Paramount Plus Good Burger 2 was better than it had any right to be. So I
Star
was
Wars.
happy. I was a happy customer. Oh, one other question for you. So
Yeah.
you had mentioned that this is your favorite Joe Pesci performance. I want you to rank this run
Okay.
of Pesci. So you got My Cousin Vinny, Goodfellas, Home Alone 1 and 2, Lethal Weapon 2 and 3.
So I haven't watched Lethal Weapon 2 and 3 in a good long while.
Hmm.
It would be this, it would be Goodfellas, it would be Home Alone, and then I'd have to rewatch the other ones. I don't know the other ones well enough to judge, but it would definitely be this then Goodfellas, which I know is probably sacrilegious to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I like the layers he plays in this. Whereas in Goodfellas, he's just up here the whole movie, which is great. Obviously, I love that performance. But
Yeah, they set the movie in like a good amount of gravity for the situation. It's funny because I was talking to one of my siblings and I was just like, "Yeah, I watched My Cousin Vinny again," and she was like, do you remember how much you loved Marissa Tomei? And I was like, in that movie, and I'm like, doesn't everybody love
Yeah.
Marissa Tomei in that movie? It bothered me that there was this Oscar urban legend that like she won by accident, that somebody read the wrong name. Did you ever hear that?
I know, but I don't
It's such bullshit. Like she's
know.
so good in it.
So good. She knows exactly the temperature she's playing at. And again, speaking of performances that are all like one thing, like all up
Yeah.
here, like I definitely heard criticism like, oh, she's just like yelling the whole time and doing an accent. I'm like, no, she's not. She's
No.
incredibly layered. She's incredible. Like that, and the pause attraction thing at the end, right? Right. I just again, you could run off, or I could run the whole thing off the top of my head, but like she is so, it's like a symphony. She is so, she's up, she's down, she's around, she's going in. She's got to pick up on the fact that Vinny knows what she's going to say. Then she picks up on the fact that like, oh, he brought me here for a reason. There's a whole like dance that's happening at the
Hmm?
end with when he calls her to the stand, but obviously very similar to the scene with the when they're in the bed and they're arguing to start, as foreplay basically.
Yeah.
Um, and that whole thing modulates back and forth based on her, and he's just, I mean, there's literally the point where he puts his legs up, he's like, watch this, like, and it's just,
Hmm?
let her go, and she's just brilliant. She should have won for that scene alone.
Yeah, I mean, and that scene too, it doesn't get enough credit for it's like maybe one of the most romantic scenes in a movie
100%.
ever because as much as he says at the end, I wish I could have done this alone, like they're yin and yang. Like,
He's doing it to prod her a little bit. That
yeah,
is like a little bit of like, trying to get her goat a little bit to get her going again.
yeah, they're
See why?
perfect matches. It's such a good movie. It's an
Yes,
American classic.
totally.
Also, an embarrassment of riches for 20th Century Fox in March 1992. March 13th, My Cousin Vinny. March 27th, White Men Can't Jump.
Remember when they remade White Man Can't Jump?
No, because I don't have Hulu and you watched it and I didn't.
And I don't remember it, so
Jack Harlow. We will be back next week with another review of a Jonathan Lynn classic, 1985's
yeah.
Clue. Yeah, 1985's Clue. I'll tell my story about how in eighth grade drama class, we were allowed to see any play that we wanted in Chicago, and our class decided Clue the musical.
All right, but until Clue next week.
Until next time.
But until next time, uh, the state would like to dismiss all charges.